Okay, welcome everyone to our meeting tonight on December 14, 2021. It is 7:02 p.m. We are meeting tonight virtually with City Hall as the anchor location. I'm wearing my mask, as is Ben Billingsley. We're in the chambers together. Carly's back in her office, so we are here in City Hall as the anchor location, but appreciate everybody's flexibility to attend virtually so that we can stay safe to stay open. Without further ado, I will call this meeting to order, and we shall have a roll call attendance. Summer, shall I, or would you like to?
Totally up to you.
Go for it.
Okay, I have dogs, so hopefully we'll behave. I have Mayor Emily Niehaus, Mike Duncan, Moab City Council, Ben Billingsley, Finance Director / Acting Deputy City Manager, Carly Castle, Acting City Manager, Kaylin Jones, Moab City Council, Karen Guzman-Newton, Moab City Council, Ronnie Durestri, Moab City Council, and Tony Knudsen-Boyd, Moab City Council. And we also have a laptop up for public comments to be made in person in the council.
Thank you so much, Summer. We shall, I know that we don't technically have the pledge on our virtual meetings, but I do have the flag behind me. And I think it might be nice if we all one last pledge of allegiance together. So why don't, since we're at an anchor location, we'll rise and we'll say the pledge. I pledge allegiance of the United States of America and
to the republic for which it stands,
under God,
indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
All right, thanks everybody. And now we're at citizens to be heard. So we'll first hear from the citizen in the chambers with us. And I will go ahead and mute me so we don't have the echo. Okay. Welcome and state your name.
Hello, I'm Aaron Lindberg, and I spoke last city council meeting, and I kind of feel like I explained things well enough. I'm a plumber here in Moab, and there's some things happening that I see that I feel like, yeah. Oh, okay. So there's some things here that I kind of want to clear up in I've talked to some of you about the problem I'm seeing. And so first demonstration, it's this. This is a sewer pipe coming off a person's home, and it's actually made of tar paper, and it gets starting to get squished. And so that's Orangeburg pipe. Yeah. So the problem is that stuff was all in the 40s, 50s, and into the 60s. And that's kind of like, as a homeowner, your responsibility is to the main sewer line. And I kind of, on the last meeting, was kind of like, oh, can you extend your responsibility to the curb? I kind of was, like I said, I've talked to several of you, and I've kind of come up with maybe some good ideas for that. So the issue that I see, there's two of them I kind of see, is one, like when we dig up these roads, we've got like 100 North is a perfect example. Awesome road, beautiful. Soon I will probably be cutting it up. And that's because there is, so from the curb to the main line, that pipe is looking like what I've just showed you. And so it's like, man, like what would be cool is when we redo these roads to put in main sewer lines, the main cost for a contractor is the shoring and the heavy equipment to get in there. Like for me to tear up your yard, $2,000-3,000. It's still a lot, but for me to go from the curb to the main line, $30,000. So I brought my little erase board. So here we got the road, and then here's our house. So this is like the 3K zone. This from here on, and here's the main sewer line. That's like the 20K zone. Okay, so this section here is city property, but it's the private homeowner's pipe. So what I'm wondering is if when we scope these projects, so let's say that pipe, that 20K section is 10 feet. Pipe's $4 a foot. That's $40 in pipe. If you had the trench open, I could glue it up in an hour, $200, total. So not a big cost. So if we're exposing these lines and digging up the road, if there's a way that we can put that in there, we can build back better. That's the whole thing. So that will prevent from having to go in and cut open that nice, awesome paved road in the future. And so like when you ride your bike down the street, it's just not like this going over every single house. And so I've scoped drains on Mountain View and all the houses on kind of the north side of that street, the older section. That's a lot of those houses have old pipes. I'm seeing it in Walker, Locust, 100, all the older sections of town. I've probably cameraed 25 drains, and it's an issue. So it's kind of like, if a project's $1 million, it's like, man, it could be a little bit more to like do this extra thing that would prevent problems in the future. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that. And I'd like to, talk further with anybody who wants to. It's just kind of like, and then, okay, so sorry. The second thing I would like to say is the lack of contractors available right now. If you have a problem right now, it's virtually impossible to find somebody that'll cut open that road for you. We don't do it because my boss is like, too much red tape, can't do it. The contractors that do, it's almost a month wait for getting sewer access. Like I said on the last meeting, I know people that Rotary Park is their current toilet system right now because we're waiting for, traffic studies and stuff on like Walker Road. Like, does any of the neighbors care about traffic studies? And this is kind of my like little proposal is like, boy, the city can cut open their own roads and do things a lot faster. Is that a possibility? It'd probably be cheaper. I don't know. That's another question I got. I'd like to talk further with some people about that as well. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Aaron, that was awesome. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. And
That was good there. Thank you.
awesome to have you guys serve. And I'm sure the new people are hopefully watching and can remember that. All
I
right.
mean, this is the kind of citizens we are that might go viral. We appreciate that. Thank you so much. Oh. I'm unmuted. Summer, are there any citizens in the waiting room?
There are no citizens in the waiting room to come in, and we didn't receive any comments on this.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Are there citizens in the waiting room?
No, there are no citizens in the waiting room, and we didn't receive any comments on our forms.
Thank you. This is our citizens to be heard section. Not having anyone in the waiting room, I will move on to item 3, our public hearing. For comments for this public hearing. And again, this is proposed resolution 35-2021, a resolution amending the fiscal year 2021 and 2022 budget. So again, I'll ask just for the formality of it, is there anyone in the waiting room for this public hearing?
We have no one in the waiting room for the public hearing.
Okay, is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
There's a second.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Now, that motion passes 5-0. Seeing nobody here to make comments unless, no. and nobody online, I will go ahead and ask for a motion to close this public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you, Kaylin.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ronnie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. So we're now going to move on to administrative reports, but I just asked the council to take a brief 1-minute break. Just keep your screens open. Don't log out. Just you can stop sharing your video if you'd like for just 1 minute as Ben and I make our way back to our offices so we can unmask and participate in that way. See you soon. All right, let me just get my hair done here. All right, thanks everybody for that pause. I appreciate it. We're now into section 4 of our agenda, administrative reports. 4.1, acting city manager updates. Carly.
Good evening. First, I just want to apologize for my screen setup. I have my elevated situation going on, and my laptop is my camera, but I can't read from the screen. So I can see all of you, even if I'm at a weird angle. I just have a few updates this go around. First, I want to talk about the ranked choice voting survey. We got some questions in the community as well as requests from the city council to do a survey about everyone's experience with ranked choice voting during the last election, and so we've put out the survey, which can be accessed on the city's website's main page, and it will be open for several weeks, depending on what kind of feedback we get. And the information we collect during the survey will hopefully inform the city council about whether or not to use ranked choice voting again. So I hope everyone participates. I want to give an update on the city holiday schedule. As a reminder to everyone, the City Hall will be closed beginning December 23rd through January 3rd for the holidays. But I have an update on the Treasurer's Office specifically, and Ben sent this over, so I'm going to kind of read this. So the Treasurer's Office will be open via phone calls Monday the 27th from 9 to 2 and Thursday the 30th from 9 to 2. That Treasurer's Office is also going to be doing callbacks to anyone who has called the city over the course of the days and who leave voicemails. So if you don't get in touch with us, leave a voicemail and someone will get back to you from the Treasurer's Office. Another big event, we're having a swearing-in ceremony January 3rd at 12 p.m. for the newly elected officials. It's here at City Hall. We're going to have light refreshments. Everyone's invited. I hope to see you all there. Staff departures, appointments, and job openings. I have some good news and some sad news. The sad news is that Nora is retiring tomorrow, our planning director. She's retiring and she's going to be missed very much, and we've been lucky to have her over the past couple of years. Really exciting news is that we have filled the MARC director position, and after some interviews, we've selected Kelly McInerney, who you know is my executive assistant and my and Ben's assistant, and she's just perfect for the role. She has a great vision for the MARC. We're so excited to have her. Additionally, we have many job positions currently open, so if you are hearing from folks in the community or in your networks, I just want to make you aware we still have city manager, city attorney, planning director, deputy treasurer 1, an administrative assistant, parks worker 1, and an assistant planner as well. So if you just direct anyone to the city's website, they can find those positions if anyone is interested in those jobs. We also have a big event this week. Grand County and the City Moab are holding an open house for the Unified Transportation Master Plan. It's 5 to 6:30 p.m. at the Grand Center on the 16th. And this plan is meant to identify actionable steps and projects to achieve the local community's goals for a transportation system. So input is incredibly important, and I hope this community participates. My last point is just, I wanted to say a very fond farewell to our departing elected officials, Mike and Karen and Mayor Emily. It's been wonderful working with you all these past couple of years. I hope you have found this experience enriching because your contributions have been very meaningful and helpful, and we are all going to miss you here at City Hall. So thank you all for your wonderful service. And that's all for me.
Charlie, we're gonna miss you too. Okay, next we have on our agenda an update from our code compliance specialist, Mona.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to tell Carly, it's been great from my point of view as well. And I'm sorry that you guys have to teach a whole new crew of novices the ropes. It can't be much fun, but it's been great for me learning how to be a citizen politician, as it were. So thank you guys for your help, because I really appreciate you guys being the pros in the business. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yep, go ahead, Mona.
so Emily, what are we updating? Just the department?
Nope. I think what we were hoping for was an update around enforcement, specifically with ADU and overnight accommodations.
Perfect. So pretty much what Ronnie was looking for a few weeks ago. Okay. So in regards to ADUs and illegal nightly rentals, I think that's what you were concerned about. So just the compliance on those. In the past 2 years, we've only had to issue 9 violations for illegal short-term rentals. They don't seem to be quite as much of an issue in Moab as I think some people have the perception that they are. There's a couple areas where they're specifically allowed, and those are fairly easily found if somebody's conducting business without a business license. I can go on any of the websites for Airbnb, for VRBO, all those kinds of sites. And I check those every couple months, to be very honest with you. We had been using host compliance. We really weren't getting our money out of it. And last year when COVID started, we just determined that we weren't going to renew that contract at that time, but we left it open so that in the future, if we decided to go ahead and use that service, we would. The other illegal nightly rentals that could be in town really are in neighborhoods, and I need to depend on neighbors. This is a complaint-driven position, and I need to rely on neighbors to let me know of those. And when I hear from them, the process, whether I hear from them or if I find them online, is really pretty easy. They're conducting business without a business license is the biggest violation. And if they're in somebody's neighborhood, they're in a zone where they can't get a business license. So I send them a violation. Sometimes they'll call me and talk to me about it. Sometimes they just purchase the property. They didn't know that they couldn't do the short-term rentals. We talk about it. They stopped doing it and I closed the case. So compliance on nightly rentals is not really, it's not a big portion of what I do. It's still my priority. When I started, the council had tasked me with that as my first priority, and it remains that, but it really is not that out of hand, I don't think, within the city limits. Is that what you were hoping for, Emily or Mayor?
I think yes, and perhaps just speak a bit to, we're set to look at passing the ADU policy this evening, and so enforcement around that as well.
So, Mayor, that'll depend on what actually is passed, on how we'll be able to enforce things. If we're looking for, to regulate illegal nightly rentals in these new ADUs, it'll be the same process. If they're posting them on websites, I can find them and they'll get a violation. My notice of violation is really to open the communication with the person. Normally, there's no other way that I have to get in touch with them. So I just consider it a way to open the communication, and then they're really aware. Plus, we have it on record then. We have a good, strong record so that, they say, okay, they stop it, and in 6 months they start again. We've got the record. We've got, I indicate any of our discussions on there in the activities. And so we know we can go back to that. So I don't think that compliance with the ADUs is going to be any different than it currently is for nightly rentals. If we end up moving towards a good landlord program for long-term rentals, there would be that different component in there, but we don't have a program like that yet, and so there's not an issue with that.
Council, do you have questions regarding enforcement around overnight accommodations or ADA? Ronnie?
So I was curious, Mona, occasionally I've sent you just mailers that I or people I know have gotten from companies willing to rent my home, even though I know I live in a zone where that's not okay. And I was curious, aside from the ones that you get from me, do you get that kind of thing often?
Ronnie, very honestly, you are the only one who has ever provided me with that kind of information. I'm sure they're out there. It's still a matter, I'm not real sure if residents are real aware of how to send concerns to me. I do wonder that sometimes. I've tried to make it really, really easy. It's an online process now. You just click a big button. It's a web form. You fill it in and it goes right into my email. And I respond almost immediately within an hour. So people know I've received their complaint. But honestly, Ronnie, I haven't received those from anybody.
Thanks.
Karen?
Just curious, if we are to look at a workforce housing requirement, again, that does put the burden on your office. And at this point, at least, I don't know that we've come up with a different solution on how we're going to determine that. Do you see that, Mona, as an issue? That seems really nebulous to try to figure out.
Karen, it is. And again, I think one of the best ways to help with any control over that would be the Good Landlord program. Honestly, we can't just go knock on doors and say who lives here and can you prove that they work here? I just can't do that. But through a Good Landlord program, at least there's a business license required and there's requirements on the business license. So again, the violation could fall back to the business license. I don't know any other way that we would be able to enforce or know who's living in a home.
And then going back to the good landlord program, we spoke briefly offline, and I'm just curious if, maybe letting council and staff know what you would need in order to even enact a program like that. I mean, it's been a couple of years since we've even had that discussion.
It has been a couple of years, and actually Caitlin and I had started the conversation again earlier this year regarding good landlords. So a few years ago, if you remember, Salt Lake City offers a good landlord program. And from what I've seen of it, it seems to be very worthwhile, but I haven't spent a whole lot of time looking into it. So basically, it's a business license. If you do long-term rentals, you're required to get a business license, and they're fairly pricey. But if you go through the good landlord program, it reduces the price of it to close to nothing. The good landlord program would be participating in training on how to be a good landlord. It would allow staff to inspect the properties, because that's what we find sometimes, is that landlords they're not always up to standards, some of the rental units. Whereas if there's a good landlord program, it would involve a yearly inspection of the property to make sure that it meets building requirements, basically building health and fire. And then, so it would be enforceable through that mechanism, Karen, but it also would include more staff members. And until we're at a point where we're able to increase staff members, I really feel like that would be a full-time position for one person.
The good landlord program itself.
I do, yes. Because there's training. Were you the one that told me, somebody had told me that they thought that USU was still interested in helping provide the training for that program? Was that you or another council member?
Not me.
Okay, I can't remember right off, and I'm sorry, I don't have anything prepared on that tonight. But apparently USU at one point offered to provide the training. So it would be like they would offer the training once a month, maybe, something like that. Property owners who were interested would participate in the training. That way they would know what was expected of them. They would get a certificate from it. There would be sort of like a contract that would be signed that they, agree that these are the terms that they would continue to be in compliance with. And then they would get this great reduction on their business license. Again, I haven't researched it a whole lot because we really didn't have the personnel or the funding for it over the past couple of years. If it's something that there is an interest in, I will be more than happy to put a presentation together for you.
And Mona, and please forgive me, I forget, are you, because you have moved a couple times, are you within the police department now?
My position is in the police department, yes. Physically, I am still in the office that on the first floor where I've been. There weren't offices within the police department to house me, but I report to Braden, and I am part of the police department, yes.
So if we had a good landlord program, could that person potentially, like if USU was doing the training and there was other needs within the police department, could that be a shared position, do you think?
A shared position
with
between what?
Doing a need.
So the responsibility is shared,
yes.
You mean? So like
yes.
I could do the compliance and somebody else could do the inspections?
Yeah, yes. Or I mean, like if there's another need for an employee, can that employee be shared within, like if the police department, we always hear that the police department has more needs than we have availability.
Karen, that's a good question. And my immediate answer would probably be after a while, I think it could be. I think get getting the program up and running would just take 40 hours a week. But I think once you had it all in place and everybody had their licensing and it was just the yearly inspections, then maybe that person would be able to be half-time with someone else. It would have to be somebody with like a property maintenance certification. I don't know that we would actually need, if it were an individual position, I don't think that person would necessarily have to have a building inspector certification because we have a building inspector. But it would relieve the building inspector of doing property maintenance, home inspection kind of inspections, which are not quite as intensive. So it might be a position that could be shared with the building inspector.
Gotcha.
I don't know. Karen, honestly, I really wouldn't want to answer those kinds of questions, definitely, because we really need to look into how other cities are handling it, and then, you know, how we would write the proposal and adopt the ordinance.
So it seems that you were already with Caitlin looking at a feasibility study. So, so I think that's good to hear that staff is working on a feasibility study for this program. Other questions? Okay, thank you so much for joining, Mona.
Thank you. You guys have a good evening.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And the next is a Pack Creek Footbridge update from Annie. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. Good evening. I'll start with a little bit of history on the bridge and the situation. So this bridge was built in the late 80s, and so that makes it about 45 years old. So it was built at a time where standards and FEMA compliance was far less than it is today. Also, this bridge has been identified for replacement for several years now, but has never risen quite to a top priority funding level. The last repairs that we did to the bridge was in 2018, and that was about $12,000 that really only got us some basic repairs to the decking so that we could make it safe until we had a time where we could replace the bridge. The floods that occurred in early August finally damaged the bridge beyond safety standards. And the floods of this August, as you know, were intensified by the recent Pack Creek fire. So when talking about the bridge moving forward, we should note that the ground impact from that fire will continue to intensify floods and rains for several more years. So we closed the bridge on August 1st, and this was communicated to the public through social media. City staff and trust officials inspected the bridge in early September, and that's when it was deemed unsafe. So the city has continued to close the bridge, but the public has removed barriers, gone over barriers, around barriers, and under barriers. So we had inadvertently caused a larger hazard with some of these barriers. So we removed the rebar, but we do want to emphasize that the bridge is still closed to the public. So step forwards, so we have looked into options for either repairing or replacing the bridge. So any minor repairs to the bridge would probably not last very long, so it wouldn't be worth the time or the money, and they definitely wouldn't bring up into any sort of compliance. We have gotten quotes on differing levels of bridge designs and standards, and they've ranged from $300,000 to upwards of $1 million. So if we were to pursue a replacement, the $300 option would probably be our best choice. And I know this might sound like a very unexpected and high dollar project, but in reality, this has been on our list for years. And we have 11 other bridges in our trail system, and this one is far below our current standard. So funding, so immediately after the flooding, the city pursued FEMA, NRCS, UWR funds, and we were not eligible. So we are now looking into UOR grant that is specifically designed for infrastructure rehabilitation. And if we were successful, this could provide up to $150,000 and would be awarded in June. So the timeline moving forward would depend on council direction, but if it was funded, it could be anywhere from early summer to the end of the year, depending on which funding source. So I open it up to questions.
First question, with that grant, is that a 50-50 match grant?
It is a 50-50.
Okay. And in terms of budget, Ben, can you respond to money in the budget?
And yeah, and this will come up later in tonight's meeting as well. But we're proposing that we fund the bridge using unanticipated revenue that has been received year to date without consideration for the grant. So it would not be grant conditional. Essentially, if we did receive a grant, then it would be essentially just bonus on top. And the reason for that is because through this whole process, I think that it's been identified that this actually does serve a critical need in the community. And so we're hoping to get a quick resolution, even though it is pricier than we anticipated or hoped.
Thank you, Ben. Questions from council members? Ronnie? You're muted.
You're muted, Ronnie.
Sorry. So just to make sure I'm clear, so you're saying we could start the process with the budget opening of starting to repair the bridge, and at the same time we can still apply for the grant funding. Okay, gotcha. That sounds like a win-win. Thanks.
Well, the grant would depend. I don't know how much cost we can incur before we're awarded a grant. So it may have to wait until we have news on a grant if we pursue that.
So, yeah, Annie, I'm looking for something simple here. When all this happened, I went out and actually took pictures of all four corners. Remember Arlo, Guthrie, and taking photographs from all four corners of the room? That was an old song. You guys not old enough to remember that. Sorry, I digressed. But the point is that the sand that's been washed out from underneath the foundations is, in my opinion, it's been washed out to be sure, but it's hardly dangerous, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Unless somebody's going to go down there and try to walk in the middle of a raging flood or something like that, I don't see a problem. Why can't we just basically, I don't understand fundamentally what was so dangerous about the bridge in the first place. Maybe you guys can tell.
Right, and that might be more of an engineering questions, but I know the abutments are compromised, the decking and the railings are substandard.
Chuck, I see you're there. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, sure. We went back in 3 years ago and put about $15,000 trying to repair the bridge at that point in time. And those repairs didn't bring it up to any standard. And then during this last flood of August 1st, when the bridge was over top, the deck floated and the abutments were washed out further. We asked the insurance trust to come down. Well, they were down inspecting Walnut Lane, to be honest with you. So they were down here already in the public works facility. And they looked at it and came to the same conclusion that it doesn't meet modern standards, it's too low, and that those railings are nowhere near standard. So I got together with the public works director, the main parks person. We went out there, we inspected that bridge closely. And we determined, the three of us, the bridge should be closed. Now, I know it's your opinion that it shouldn't be, but all I can tell you is I spent 2 years as an engineer in training building bridges, and over the last 30 years, I've inspected and maintained many bridges. And I think the key here is that we have 10 other parkway bridges, if you will, that cross Mill and Pack. And if you go look at those, they don't look at all like that little tiny footbridge that crosses there. That deck floats. The girders are not girders, they're angle iron. The same with the handrails. Doesn't come anywhere near meeting a standard. It lasted, it was homemade. But like previous staff and previous councils have upgraded those previous bridges, it's just time for this one to be upgraded. And that's what, I mean, we put 2 new ones in 2018. I don't know if the council recalls. The one down there by Zach's parking lot, across Mill Creek. And then we put it in a box culvert there at the end of 200 South. And those were on the order of $300,000. So costs have gone up, I mean, probably 50% since then. And that's why we've been pursuing, trying to get this bridge replaced for the last 3 years. And every budget year we bring it up, and there just hasn't been money. We're hopeful now that Annie's found that recreation grant, potentially that we could save half of it, you know, through the grant program. But that's to answer your question directly, Mike. That's the reason why it's in the bad shape that it is because it's in bad shape. We think it's about 35 years old, but no one knows. There's no record.
Okay. Well, Chuck, I don't disagree that it's non-standard. I don't disagree that it's old. I don't disagree that it would be nice if it was brand new, but from a standpoint of safety, all right. I mean, I go across that bridge all the time. People, and I'll tell you, if you want to worry about what's safe about it, the thing that's really unsafe about it when you come in there at night, particularly if you're on a bike and you're coming in from the church side, if you're not careful and you don't have a good light on, you can crash right into a steel railing that's parked halfway across the cotton picking sidewalk. That's where you're going to get hurt. I mean, once you're on the bridge itself, at least it's got rails on it. Unless you're dead drunk, I don't think you're going to fall over into a creek that's a foot deep. Okay, well, I mean, that's my take.
Yeah, and the only thing I would say, you know, it's kind of like whenever we do any project, we go out and observe the situation. I've spent hours at that bridge, and there are people who cross in wheelchairs who are very unsteady. There are people who cross on canes and crutches. We've seen really good athletes cruise across on their bikes, just like you're saying. I'm just saying that for all the users, we have to consider them, and for those type of users, that bridge does not satisfy any ADA compliance whatsoever. Either in the, you're right about the approaches, but also on the bridge itself.
Yeah. All right. Well, the only other thing I would offer, then I will stop, is that if you can come in, you know, less than 300K, which I'm stunned about, or 10 cars basically. If you come in, given that it's going to wash away in a decade or two anyway, and I don't disagree with that. We periodically are going to get floods on that creek. Just let the sucker wash away. I mean, rather than throwing a lot of money at a really expensive structure, just let it run for as long as it wants to run. And if it comes and washes away, we'll come back and haul it back. I mean, that would be my vote if it can save a substantial amount of money and be satisfactory otherwise.
Thank you, Mike, for those comments. Karen?
Well, I mean, Chuck, I'm just curious because when we voted our last meeting on the other Pack Creek Bridge, it was to the tune, I mean, the city, can you refresh me the numbers that we're spending on that bridge?
It's the 400 East Bridge over Pack Creek?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so that's the bridge widening project. That's a $370,000 from the city, $370,000 from UDOT. So, and like we talked about the last meeting, that's a fully functional bridge except for the metal planks for a bike path or a bike lane, a protected bike area. Is that correct? It was twofold, Karen, is what I had mentioned. You're just about there. It's that metal sidewalk that's substandard and failing, needs to be replaced some manner. And then the other is we can't get standard width bike lanes out of it. So what that project will do is it'll put in a new concrete sidewalk and it'll get standard bike lane widths, which are 5-foot bike lane widths. So that's what the purpose of that project, which is why UDOT gave us the grant, was to bring it up to a bicycle standard. It's a bicycle grant. They wouldn't give us, and just, I don't know if this is your question, but they wouldn't give us money for these kind of bridges. I've asked them for pedestrian money multiple times, multiple members of UDOT, and they don't have a program currently for that anyone's aware of.
So, and I'm only bringing this up because at the next day, there was the Unified Transportation Plan. In that plan, 400 West was identified as and the bridge was on there as a project that was going to be getting funded. And it was more along the lines of using it as an arterial road, and some of the reasoning that, you offering 12 feet in each direction for semi trucks to be able to use that road for the 2 times a year that Main Street is closed. I mean, again, is it possible to not make it as wide as possible for vehicles and make it wider for bicycles and pedestrians? Because I don't think that anybody wants a arterial road with semi trucks. And then the next day I found out that UDOT has informed the Chamber of Commerce and the high school that they potentially are not going to allow any closures of Main Street again. So that reasoning of, having semi trucks using that road seems not to be valid. Am I wrong on that?
Yeah, I would disagree with you about that semi trucks won't use it, but I did mention to you, and if I didn't, I apologize. When we're in design, we'll look at putting in 11-foot lanes. There's a possibility we could put in 11-foot lanes and make those bike lanes wider. Absolutely. And we'll look at it during design. I didn't say no. I was just saying it at first glance, that's the standard roadway width is 12 feet for an arterial. So, but during design, we can certainly look at that, and we will.
So there's no way to use some of that bridge money to offset some of those costs? I mean, is that just a done deal?
Yeah, unfortunately, no. I mean, I asked in multiple meetings, I've asked UDOT for money for this, to repair or replace this footbridge over by the church that we're talking about. They don't have money for that. And their program won't transfer money to that, if that's your question.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like the best state resource would be the recreation grant and not a UDOT grant, based on what
I wouldn't be surprised if 20 years from now, UDOT is in the grant business for pedestrian facilities, because it's changed in that way. The same way they're now funding some bicycle facilities, and 20 years ago, they wouldn't do that. But right now, they just don't do it.
Well, I'm very hopeful that the Office of Outdoor Recreation will provide us with this grant. They provided us with the grant for the Bike Skills Park. They've done other great projects in Moab. And so I certainly am hopeful, and I'm very grateful to have Annie, you on staff, as you have the experience of that. I think I just am happy that we're shining a light on the needs of our bridges and our multimodal transportation pinch points. I do think it's worth to think beyond the footbridge or the little bridge at the church, because it's still pretty clunky after you get off the bridge. Like Mike was sharing, the bar approach from the church, having to go through a church parking lot. It's not really a delineated trail. And then when you're on the other side, there's trail-ish, but then where you spit out it's complicated. So hopefully we can be a little more comprehensive with the bridge than just the bridge itself. But I'm grateful. Karen, more from you?
I'm sorry, just quickly, just to go back, Ben, if we were to use those funds now, and you were saying it would just be a bonus on top if we get the grant. Let's say we spend, do we have to wait till June? I mean, or would it be a reimbursable expense if we pay it all out now?
No, it would be not reimbursable. So we would need to get into the grant process, and we might be able to do it before official award, but we would need the application in, which is early March, and then after the review process. So it would be later this spring.
And then we would have an idea before that grant award. We would probably have a good feel for whether or not it would be awarded. And between the prep work that has to be done with engineering and design, I mean, we've got there's a time window there where I think it would make sense for it to line up and know whether or not we would be funded on that grant.
So now
time to put together, and I do think that it's actually good timing. The grant process is good timing for that. Like if we wanted to, we couldn't go tomorrow and build a bridge. We have to go through the process of the design, right?
So is it closed now until potentially June?
Yeah, by signage. It's closed by signage, not, there's no physical barrier.
Okay. Play at your own risk.
Ronnie, you had your hand up, and then Kaylin.
Well, I wasn't sure if we were going to discuss this more during the budget opening or if you wanted input for where we stood individually as council members on this now. So I guess that's my question.
I think we should leave the funding to the funding topic, the budget topic. I feel comfortable with that. Kaylin?
Chuck, I realize this may be a difficult question to answer, but can you just ballpark if this bridge were a vehicular bridge, how much it would cost?
Oh, sure. If it were a vehicular bridge, that's going to be on the order of $3 million. And let me explain why I would say that. It's Pack Creek, so it's 7,000 cubic feet per second in the 100-year flood. So we would span the floodway, and that floodway with a vehicular bridge. The floodway is 200 feet wide, and we've measured it, and we know what the scour velocities are. They're between 7 and 12 feet per second. So a vehicular bridge, we would span the floodway. What we're talking about doing potentially, and we think we can do this because we're going to have to get approval from the state and FEMA, and I guess I'm the approver for FEMA because we'll just have to follow their rule. Is we can use a smaller pedestrian bridge, like build it to a 10 to 25 year standard versus a 100-year standard. But a vehicular bridge, we would definitely put in a 100-year standard, and which would be about $3 million.
Okay, thanks. I asked because one thing that I think we probably all noticed is that outside of the downtown core grid, it can be a little inconvenient getting around Moab because of the way that our road network is. It can be circuitous to get across town, and it seems like that is largely a function of that we're blessed with two creeks and the expense of building roads across them. And so even though 300,000 seems like a lot for a little bridge, in some ways it's a bargain relative to extending the grid throughout town. And this could be a blessing in the long term because it incentivizes different forms of transportation, biking and walking. So it does seem like a lot to me, but I feel like part of that is that I'm looking at the existing bridge and thinking, this thing for 300,000, but when I look at the other new bridges, it makes more sense.
Yeah, and that's really a key point. Those other 10 bridges are not anywhere near this kind of designs, of planks across the wash, which is what this is. They're actually designed to pass the flows as much as they can, and they have drilled and engineered abutment. So, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Annie and Chuck and council for your questions. We're going to move on as it's almost 8 o'clock. So we're on to mayor and council reports. Agenda item number 5. And I'll go first. And it's my last report. I'm so excited. It's bittersweet. And I'm really going to miss everybody. I'm going to miss the celebrations that I've been so honored to serve as mayor, the Veterans Day celebration, the holiday events, the tree lighting and the parade. So much fun. I'm going to miss them. Also, as I've been participating in transition meetings and the ongoing admin meetings, I'm going to miss the admin team very much. I'm very grateful, Carly, to your leadership, Ben, to the two of you for stepping up, Braden for stepping up to be our acting chief, Levi and all of his work with Public Works, Chuck, everyone, I'm going to miss you. Summer, shout out to Summer. She's smiling. The dog right now. But the transition meetings are going well, and I'm just so grateful for the mayor-elect she's been working very diligently to hit the ground running, and has created such confidence in staff and me that we're not going to skip a beat. And I look forward to being a citizen and working with Joette in that way. What else? I'm going to miss my friends at the League of Cities and Towns. I'm going to miss going to LPC because, as it turns out, I love policy. I'm going to miss my friends at the Association of Government. Bruce Adams, I think the Commissioner Adams was maybe an unlikely friendship when I started as mayor, and he personally delivered to me the plaque and the candy from the Association of Governments as a gratitude for serving on that board, and it was very sweet. I will miss them, and it was a good meeting. I will miss our friends at UDOT. I'm so grateful for the Highway 191 widening project and their professionalism, and finishing the project and sticking to the requests of this council. I came up with a new thing to say to UDOT, which is, you deserve our thanks, UDOT. You deserve our thanks, because they do, for so many of the projects that we would never be able to afford in getting organized around transportation. They're not our silver bullet for transportation, just like we saw. And I think having the commission down and them asking questions and being there to clarify where we stand these days around a bypass, where we stand with gratitude for the projects we've seen over the years, but where we stand in looking forward. I am excited about the vision process that we in the county are engaging in, because it is going to shape our future asks of UDOT, and go rail is all I want to say about that. Let's see. I guess that's mostly my report, other than I just want to share my gratitude with staff that I've worked with over the years and this council. It's been a blast. So I just want to say thank you for this beautiful experience and this very educational experience. I know I'm a better citizen as a result, and I'm grateful for everyone that decides to run for public office. I know from me, they'll get a whole lot of support. That's it from me. Ronnie? Oh, you're muted.
Okay, I've had a bunch of meetings. I will not mention them all. Let's see. We, since our November council meeting, have had 2 EMS board special service district board meetings, one on November 16th, one on December 14th, and I will just shoot you some highlights on that. Let's see, back in November, we discussed that October ended as the busiest month in EMS history. And let's see, also the fact that crews had already surpassed last year's interfacility transfers. So as you may know, sometimes we have to transfer patients either to St. Mary's or up to Salt Lake City, or sometimes to Provo. So at any rate, that's up too. And just a note to everyone, they have had to turn down transfers in some cases. They say more often than before, and be aware that's because of having limited staff, and also the fatigue that some of those long transfers put on staff. We had tried recently to start putting a 3rd person on those runs, but we don't always have the crews to send a 3rd person. So let's see, that's November, December, eek. Sorry, so many things open on my, oh, here. Okay, our meeting that we had this morning, So far, 8 of the 11 previous months have set new monthly records. November was up, but not as massively as October. To give you some idea, one of the busiest days was November 26th, with 11 calls in 24 hours, including 2 base jumper rescues, 1 emergency interfacility transport to Utah Valley Hospital, and several other very sick patients. Let's see. Staffing is seeing a little bit of relief because it's the time of year that some of the staff who have seasonal jobs come back into town. And I'll just make a comment or two on the building. They were having, let's see, a final walkthrough tomorrow, final inspection on the 16th, and that's with Barry from the city. They're still waiting for some things because of delays, as everyone is experiencing from some things so we're still waiting for some bay doors. But they will start moving some staff in around the 20th of December, crews, and then the administrative staff is more likely to move in January, and they were thinking maybe ribbon cutting sometime in February. So that is that. And then we, on the 17th of November, had our system of care, Regional Advisory Committee. I have trouble with some of these acronyms. Regional Advisory Council, and that is Grand and San Juan counties. And as a reminder, their high fidelity wraparound program is, and I'm going to read this, just so I don't botch it, but a customized service approach to keep families safely together while effectively helping children with emotional and/or behavioral health needs thrive in their homes, schools, and communities. So basically helps families stay together as opposed to children having to leave the community. And research shows that that is better for everybody. We had a really good presentation by Liz Manley, who has been doing this work for more than 30 years, happens to be with the University of Maryland in New Jersey. Without getting into too many details, just ask me if you want more later. But I do feel like someone needs to mention, unfortunately, that one of our co-chairs of our meetings was Pastor Dick Pacheco, who unfortunately passed away earlier this month. And I know a lot of you in the community interfaced with him either through just meetings you were on or just a lot of things he planned in the community. I know I went to the event he planned, thank you event he planned for 9/11 for first responders. And so just to anybody who might want to know, there is a memorial for Pastor Pacheco this coming Friday at 11 in the morning at the River of Life Fellowship Church. And that is going to be live streaming at the Spanish Valley Mortuary page, and people can leave tributes there. Very sad. Let's see what else. Then I was just going to mention something else that now eludes me. So I'll spare you the list of LPC and other meetings I had with staff. Thank you.
Thanks, Ronnie. Mike.
Yeah, 2 things. Part of it's water again. You guys, I copied you on the Salt Lake City Tribune article about the Western Water Associates. We had a long, week-long session with those same people a year or 2 ago, and they've basically come out and said what a lot of people around here think is painfully obvious, that with diminishing snowpack and rainfall and warmer temperatures over the last couple of decades, the Colorado River has a real problem. It will be interesting to me to see what the state's Division of Water Rights will do with this publicity, which, by the way, was chosen to time with the start of a conference up in Salt Lake about water. Because if Division of Water Rights, they're supposed to be the pros in all this, all right? And if they just ignore it, stonewall it, so to speak, and say, hey, we've still got a couple hundred 100,000 acre feet to go, and it seems to me it would damage their credibility. So they need to address the conclusions of the competing report, if you will, and work it out and see who's right, because it's very important. So I'll be interested to see how that goes on. The other thing is USU, they're having the brand new building, classroom building up on the hill south of town on Aggie Boulevard, is having a opening ceremony on April 1st. Now that date has been set. It looks like it will be late in the afternoon. There's a ribbon cutting ceremony. There's a 50-year time capsule, 50-year time capsule, last I heard. And most importantly, the group I've been interested in is trying to line up some notable professionals around the town who have put their college educations to use and have gone on to do great things with it. And it's basically an attempt to encourage junior kids that are late in their junior year at the high school to look ahead, not only just what college classroom looks like, but what a profession would look like. And so the idea is to get the kids really excited if they could meet the likes of, take Joe Kingsley, for example. Joe's been around and done a million different things, and among them nuclear physics, for crying in the bucket, and a variety of others. We got nurses, doctors, all kinds of talented people out here. So the idea is to line them all up in little booths. I made a joke, it was kind of like going to confession, a series of booths along the road where you talk to your favorite priest who will get you excited about what kind of profession you might want to get into. So I've been involved with planning efforts on that. And so I hope all you guys can make that. That's April 1st. That's it.
Thank you so much, Mike. Okay, Tani.
Okay, I did attend the Veterans Day ceremony back in November, and it was very nice. I've attended two Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District meetings. One was November 11th, the other was the 9th. The COVID ward was dismantled on November 14th, and the last positive test in the care center was November 4th. Care center staff is working diligently to educate the few staff that are unvaccinated, and hoping that they can convince them that it's an important thing to do. That board is looking to add a few board members. And so if you know anybody in the community that might be interested, they can get a hold of anybody that's currently on the board, or they can call the care center directly. Otherwise, they were pretty much just business meetings. The Housing Authority, the big exciting news for them is that construction has begun at Arroyo Crossing. And that does feel like that has been a long time coming, but it's been a really good learning experience for the land trust and those people involved. And I think it will serve to, it's again, not a silver bullet, but it will serve to help our housing crisis. I had a really rotten cold, and so I did not attend the museum board meeting, but they are continuing to work on their it's a self-driven course about standards of excellence, and there's been a lot of work on the up and coming 2022-23 programs and possible displays and items that they will be able to borrow, because when they revamped the museum, they really upped their standards of curation and display and the environmental quality of the museum and how they displayed things. So we will be eligible to get more borrowed programs from other museums in the region. And Friday I went to Elected Officials Essentials in Price, and it was a really good reminder of what our roles and what our responsibility as council members is. It was a good reminder that we are doing a lot of good work, and that so are a lot of other people. The wit and wisdom of you can either think famous or infamous, I don't know, David Church was evoked many, many times during that day. And it was just a really good reminder My favorite quote that he ever said is, if you know if you're cheating, so don't. And I think it was kind of an eye-opening experience that this council as a body has strayed from some of our responsibilities and taken on roles that don't necessarily, that shouldn't necessarily involve us. So I am truly looking forward to the new council and getting back on track and being a good council that governs ourselves. We can't govern our city if we can't govern ourselves. That's all I have.
Thank you, Tawny, and thanks for being a most excellent pro tem over the last 4 years.
It was my pleasure.
Karen.
I attended the Unified Transportation Planning Open House. I had quite a few questions to the UDOT representative that was there, Devin Shire. He's our new Ryan Anderson, and just some information that he shared with me was that we are seeing an average of 800 vehicles an hour on Main Street. This was a study that was just done for 1 week in October, because I had questions about left-hand turn signals, which we know is constituents come to us all the time. Like, why can't we have left-hand turn signals? I really don't see that happening in our downtown. And then I asked questions about the rapid rectangular flashing beacon lights just for safety. And then Devin went ahead and checked out some of the areas. Wow, the wind is raging outside. That were concerns near Sweet Cravings, the crossings at 300, so 400, 300, and 200. There's some lights out. Spoke with Levi. Levi was going to contact UDOT. UDOT made it very clear to me that we are responsible for all lights on Main Street. So just wanted to put that out there, that there are some lights that are out. We had a meeting with Mila Dunbar Irwin and Ben Billingsley and First Light Technologies. They're a solar light company out of Canada that helps transition businesses and municipalities to solar lighting. And I would like to hope that as projects move forward in the future, that the council and staff will continue to look at ways to reach sustainability and resilience while at the same time saving the city money and long-term energy costs. There's a real opportunity there. It was very apparent with that meeting that this technology is best suited for new infrastructure, as it is definitely cost prohibitive to retrofit our existing lighting. I had a chamber board meeting. It was mostly about trying to get volunteers for the tree lighting and the parade. And I just passed out hot chocolate at the tree lighting ceremony. And then I wanted to thank the chamber and Sweet Cravings and Red Rock Bakery for the homemade cookies, the mayor, city park staff for making Swanee look amazing, and Santa for the celebration. I had an airport board meeting that there's a continued trajectory of record number enplanements. For the end of November, we're at 21,417, and that's just with SkyWest and Redtail. Skydive Moab has reached 25,000 jumpers so far this year. They have also had a record number of skydivers. Another interesting tidbit from the airport board meeting was that their parking brought in $25,000 so far this year. And again, I mentioned this the last time, but they are only flying out of Canyonlands to Denver for December, January, and February. Salt Lake is going to pick back up in March, and the flight leaves at 2:30. The arrival comes in from Denver at 2:30 and the departure's at 3:15. And a required mask mandate in the airport will continue to be implemented until March, until Grand County will look at that that requirement again. I also attended the UDOT Emerging Area Rural Dialogue meeting. We were broken up to groups to talk about long-term visions for the area from Bluff to Carbon County. And Mayor, it was exciting because rail was an interest from everybody in those groups. And I want to thank Joe Kingsley and Michael List for the transit committee that I belonged to 3 years ago when they brought UDOT down to one of our meetings, and they actually funded a $60,000 rail study, which so, you know, talking about rail again is definitely not unusual for them. So hopefully something will happen in the future. And I would just like to point out too that the annual AADT, the annual average daily traffic numbers on Main Street are hitting 18,000, and 35 to 39% of that is semi-truck traffic. And that was according to Robert Dow. Also, and I just want to encourage the future council and existing council to Jeff Saunders, who is our regional planning manager for UDOT. He was just an incredible resource for transit and for so many different planning questions and grants that we received. Chris Hall is our new Jeff Sanders. So hopefully staff and council will create a good relationship with Chris. And then last night I attended the Arches National Park Time Entry Open House, sponsored by the Travel Council and the Chamber and UTIA and the National Park. And it's starting, the National Park is going live January 3rd, and that will be for reservations in April. So that's all I have. And I just want to thank the council, staff, and residents so much for entrusting me to be your city council representative. It was an honor, and I took the position very seriously, and I realized that it is a paid position, and because of that, I did what I thought was right for the community, and I tried to make the best decisions possible with the information that we had, and I have the utmost faith in our new mayor and our new council, and Mayor Niehaus, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Karen. Kaylin.
I attended a travel council meeting, and to pick up where Karen left off, we have about as many people jumping out of airplanes as we do getting into them here. We got an update from Love's Communications about their work last month, as well as the state of travel. The projections that they're looking at from multiple sources are that domestic travel is looking strong for next year, but international is projected to possibly not recover until about 2025. So should be a good year, but maybe summers could still be a little soft. They, as well as travel council staff, have had a flurry of activity around the Arches timed entry rollout. They reported that following that meeting that Karen mentioned, there's been dozens of media articles and mentions, and it's been largely positive. And then just out of another conversation, a possible catchphrase for 2022 is regenerative tourism. I also attended a travel council sustainability committee that went dormant with a number of members leaving, but kind of reconstituting it. Previously, it was focused on sort of a sustainable tourism certification, but it seemed like there was really a desire to just sort of engage more on sustainability as it relates to our community, with maybe a focus on water in 2022. So that could look, a number of the corporate chain hotels already do a sustainable certification, but getting which is typically they'll have their own internal process for that. and just getting a better sense, surveying who's doing what, and then also maybe getting them to do, everyone to rally around a couple of water conservation strategies. I attended a NAR network sort of group learning that I think a number of you have been on. And it was talking about housing and workforce. It was interesting, I would say, but the main outcome for me is that I had a follow-up meeting with the mayor-elect of Springdale and their planner, because they're getting ready to engage on overnight accommodations and short-term rentals, and they wanted to learn from our experience. So glad to be able to share with them some of the materials that we developed as a part of that. I attended a community renewable energy agency board meeting. It was short, more business than anything. I attended a housing task force meeting, and that was largely focused on the next iteration of the housing plan, and we focused on revising the vision and goals, sort of the top level items. And then I also attended the UDOT Emerging Area Rural Dialogue, and I would say what struck me from that is just how much commonality, even though it was a diverse group of communities, it still seems like we're all struggling with traffic on main streets, and we all want like better solutions. And one thing that a UDOT representative said to me is that, or to our small group, is that they were realizing that sometimes maybe the solutions they don't need to solve the problems where they're being experienced, which was interesting to me. Sometimes the solutions, yeah, I'll leave it at that. And I'll just close by saying, Mayor, Mike, Karen, thank you for this last 4 years. I can't believe it's over or almost over, but thank you for your leadership. I got that, Mayor. Thank you for your leadership and passion and dedication. You all brought something unique and valuable to the council, and I'll miss you.
I mean, talk about dedication and passion. The part of our meetings that I enjoy most is honestly hearing what each of us are doing, the boards we're sitting on. I mean, that is the professional interface that we have with the community, and also, outside of our community. It's really awesome. And if nothing else, this is a hardworking council. Thank you all for all your hard work. Okay, and with that, where are we on our agenda? The approval of the minutes. The approval of the minutes, section 6, November 9th and November 16th, both the regular meeting and the special meeting. Is there a motion?
I can make a motion to approve the minutes of November 9th and November 16th.
Thank you, Tawny. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kaylin. Discussion? All those in favor? Hold on. I just realized that I need to do a roll call. And I believe I have a roll call document here.
It should be in your folder.
In my folder.
In your sign folder.
In my sign
signature, yes, in there.
I had a moment of which folder? Oh, I just heard a dog. Okay. Here we go. Sorry, everybody. Let's see. Okay. Kaylin.
Aye.
Connie.
Aye.
Ronnie.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. We're now into old business. Item 7.1, Water Conservation Plan Update, Briefing and Possible Action. Hi, Mila. Welcome. Sorry you have to miss the Science on Tap this evening. It's
no worries. I hope some people went for sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for your incredible work on this plan. There was some discussion, some late in the hour discussion around some amendments, and we see that you presented the plan as is. the plan with a suggested paragraph, and then also a suggestion to include the definition of
Demand hardening.
demand hardening. So I appreciate you hustling and communicating with council and others to be able to respond so quickly. And council questions for Mila, or I would entertain a motion.
Well, I'll be, you guys may have questions, but I'd be happy to move that we accept the second paragraph as well as the report as it stands right now. I had some concerns about some of the language in the additional paragraph that were kind of esoteric, kind of got into, well, what would we do with certain amounts of water? But once you kind of understand where we're driving at here, I'm not going to belabor the point. I think we're better off to go ahead and approve the paragraph anyway.
Was that a motion?
No, that was not a motion. That was
yeah, I thought I said that.
Okay, well, if we're moving here, I just want to make sure you're aware of the demand hardening definition as well.
Yeah, do you guys know what we mean by demand hardening?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so move away.
I move that we approve the water conservation plan as presented to council with the inclusion of an additional paragraph as referenced in the documentation.
I will second.
Thank you, Mike and Tani. Just to be clear, does that include the definition of demand hardening in that motion? That it's understood that includes. Okay, discussion. Ronnie.
So I was curious if colleagues wanted to spend a little bit of time discussing some of the other suggestions that were made to us in emails that we received. And that was just the suggestions. I've tried to highlight them here because these were good to me. I don't know if we have time or ability to address them tonight, but I guess I would like to throw out the possibility of some conversation with colleagues about these various items. So obviously, when we discuss conservation with a lot of our residents, I think a lot of us have heard the response, I don't know if I want to save that much water if it's just going to go to building new hotels or short-term rentals. I mean, we have a freeze on these things right now, but or second homes. And some of that plays into some other comments that we got about wanting to make clear, if I don't know if the majority of us feel this way, but I think I certainly do, that we're hearing those concerns from residents, and also some concerns that have been raised about, you know, if we have a commitment to thinking about kind of the messaging moving forward. And this may be more of a thing for the next council, you know, to revisit the plan and consider an update. And I know the incoming mayor wants to have a lot of conversations about water, but I just wanted to give voice to the fact that I know I've heard that from a lot of people, and, you know, that suggestions have been made that maybe we look at whether in the plan we really do want to surpass the gallon per day, what is it, gallon per capita per day. I always get the acronym wrong, that the state is asking for, because that does have some consequences by surpassing it. If we were to just stick with what they're asking, that's one thing. But if we surpass it, we're kind of committing ourselves to when they make the next ask, maybe being further along the line. And if we don't surpass just the basic number that they're asking for, maybe that does leave some leeway to be putting some more water, you know, into the wetlands, or leaving it in the aquifer or in the system in Mill Creek, because that has benefits too to all of us long term. I mean, especially if we're using a 20% reduction climate change number, which I understand is probably the right number, but it's in the range of what's expected. It might come in lower, it might come in higher. But if it comes in higher, that's something for all of us to think about as well. So I guess part of what I'm asking for is for the people who are staying on the council to continue to have conversations that really keep all of that on the table. But I am wondering if there's any appetite with anyone to leave the gallon per capita per day. I know last time we did agree to surpass that bar, but I know I've since, had these emails and conversations with people where I'm like, oh, there may actually be some good reasons not to surpass it yet. And if it does need to be surpassed, to leave that in the hands of the new council and these additional water conversations that are happening. So I'll throw that out there.
Is that, would that change how you're going to vote based on the motion? For you?
Well, I know I've definitely had to think about the strategy harder of surpassing the state's per capita number. And I didn't know if anyone else had been giving more thought to that, because we haven't had a chance to discuss it, since we've got some of these emails. So that's kind of a question to colleagues. Is it giving anyone else pause that there may be some advantage? Because you can always go back and change it, and I think you could up it, but I don't know if it's a good idea to pass it and then decide you want to go down.
Well, let's ask a pointed question to Mila. The weight of this document serves us how and where and for how long?
So this document is non-binding. I think that's the most important point. It covers the next 5 years. At which point we'll do another update, and we can decide at that point, how things are going and where we would want things to go from there. There's always the possibility of amending it along the way. I think, the state goals that are set for our area are regional. And based on a number of our neighbors as well. And I don't necessarily think that they are appropriate for Moab, which is why we chose a different one. I think there's a lot to be said for, being really careful about considering our goal, but like I said, it's non-binding. So it's really a target in general, just to sort of lead us in the right direction.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So that's helpful in terms, well, just before we move on from Ronnie, hopefully that's helpful in terms of like our action tonight, this document, but still that, where tomorrow is, we can do more work and not be bound, I think is the takeaway for me. And that's good.
Yeah, Ronnie, I want to second what Mila said. Don't get too wrapped around the axles about gallons per day per capita kind of thing. We don't really, in my opinion, we don't really understand why we did as well as we did in the last 5 years. We think it's got something to do with the fact that we changed water conservation, water treatment plants. The new one uses less water and more electricity. Yeah, it's an ongoing process. So I wouldn't, as I say, it's a goal, and I think I'm comfortable going with it myself anyway.
I think at this late date, it's important to recognize the work that staff and Mike and everybody that has worked on this plan has put into it. And I honestly think that a lot of the suggestions from citizens have been incorporated into this, and people have been listened to. We have to remember it's a plan. It's not carved in granite. It's adjustable, and it is important to not to bind our incoming mayor and our incoming council to something that they will have to support over their next 4 years or revamp it. So I think it's incumbent upon us to pass this evening and move ahead and not get bogged down in the details. We can amend it and we can make changes to it. It's a living document.
I guess
Ronnie?
my only other than comment for the record, just for the new council who may be watching is, I would hope that maybe you keep in mind, when we talk about the coalition, there have been discussions about the potential advantage of having Grand County administration, the commission having some representation because of the land use authority they have. And I would just hope that in considering that, I would think that it would be equally important to consider San Juan. Okay, that's it for my comments.
Any other comments about the plan other than gratitude for Mila? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to call for the vote. Ronnie?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Kaylin?
Aye.
Bonnie?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Thanks, Mila. Thanks for sticking around and missing a fun event. We appreciate you. But we're not done yet, are we? The Water Conservation and Drought Management Board bylaws. Actually, I'm pulling this from our agenda. Here's why. If we were to pass this tonight, based on a resignation we just received, they would not have a quorum to be able to meet in the new year. So we're just, we're not going to table this. We're just going to pull it from the agenda, and the Water Conservation Board will bring it to us when they're ready to amend the bylaws. Yep, Ronnie.
Oh, can we just ask who's on the board currently?
Do you mean who's continuing?
Yeah.
So the three members that are continuing are Steve, I don't know how to say his last name. Getz,
G-E-T-Z.
Yeah. Steve Getz, Arnie, and Kara.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're moving on to, well, pull. Agenda item 7.3 and agenda item 7.4. So this has been worked on for a while. This is on our agenda. This is regarding the, and goes back to the zone change denial that this developer received for this parcel on Cane Creek, not to be confused with the development down Cane Creek at the river. This is different for those watching. But where Carly and I were in discussion and with the developer as well, it just felt like this council needed more information around a development agreement and really needed just a workshop to understand more specifically the development agreement as a process, this particular one, and the pros and cons of doing this versus the zone change work that we're talking about for the R3 and R4. So the developer decided to pull this from our agenda to give us time to have that workshop, which will be scheduled likely the first meeting of the new council in January. And so moving on, was there a comment? Yes.
Are we allowed to ask a question? I mean, I just have there is just about this agenda item. I mean, it said that the city council was asked to consider entering into a development agreement. I do not, are you asking that of us now? Because it's how it's written, it shows that we were asked it felt like reading that we were asked at a previous time. And this is completely new to me.
I think that this is, no, it's saying this is the development agreement that we're being asked to consider. I don't think I understand your question.
It says that Mr. Satterfield notified staff that he's willing to sign the agreement as drafted. Prior to this action, the city council was asked to consider entering into a development agreement. There was no time that I was.
City council is being asked to enter into an agreement. We had some meetings with the developer. Staff worked with a drafting attorney to come up with a development agreement as a way to find a mechanism to move forward. Kaylin, I don't know if you want to speak to that. You were part of that.
Well,
Yeah.
I'd rather not. I mean,
Well, yeah, so I think where we're at now is just having a workshop so that council can better understand the development agreement and where we are. Ronnie?
Okay, so just to be clear, when that workshop comes, it will be specific to this project, or I definitely feel like I do need, and probably all of us do need, kind of a development agreement 101 class. So I think that's what you're saying is something on the pros and cons of them, because I'd also like to ask, yeah, I mean, I was confused by the section Karen read too, because I didn't know like how much the attorney cost and blah, blah, blah. So I'd like to know more about, yeah, that part of the process too.
Definitely, yes. That's what it is, the higher level of that. And then as it pertains to this specific.
But Mayor, I'm sorry, just like on page 3, though, it says the city council was asked to consider entering into the development agreement. The draft agreement is as attached. So it is stating that we were asked to go into this. I don't know if maybe there is other council members who were notified of doing this, but I'm just stating that I was not, and how this is written on page 3, it shows that we were asked to consider to enter into a development agreement.
This is the first time it's on our agenda.
Okay, yeah, I would just ask if this agenda summary resurfaces that someone fix that language, because it does imply that we were consulted.
Yes, council, no, this is the first time it's hitting our agenda. Yeah.
Well, Karen, let me add, I think fundamentally everybody is right. I can tell you that because I was one of the dissenting votes when we turned them down the first time, I got a long call from a developer afterwards, and he wanted to know what he could do to make this pass. And we talked about affordable housing, what we were calling it at the time and so forth. And it became clear that just a straight R3 zone, that's what I told him anyway, wasn't going to fly. I mean, that's why we turned it down in the first place. So he went back and worked on it. And Karen, you're right in the sense that when he hung up the phone, I didn't know what he was going to do next. The next thing I knew was this development agreement shows up on our agenda, and I am told that an attorney drafted it. For what it's worth, I thought the development agreement was very well written, and it's the least controversial part of what's been written so far. And whether or not we want to agree to those particular terms or not, 33% and all that remains to be seen. But I thought the development agreement itself was the most straightforward piece and clearly the first thing that had to be done. But you're right, Karen, nobody asked me specifically about accepting a development agreement. It just showed up on the agenda.
That's
I think
right.
that'll just help clarify it for people who read the packet and for the public. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. And again, that'll be on the next agenda. So now we're at 7.5, proposed ordinance 2021-16, and an ordinance amending the text of the Moab Municipal Code to revise section 17.70, accessory dwelling units, and section 17.06.020, definitions, briefing and possible action. So Corey, thanks for joining us, and I'll let you take it away.
All right. Well, we'll dive right in. With this ordinance draft that we're reviewing tonight, there were a number of what would be visible changes, but really the context of what we're looking at, the body has not changed. The reason for the changes that we have seen are the legal review that we worked on with Snow Christensen and staff to ensure that the language within the ordinance is consistent with the state statute requirements, which is the cause for the major change, which we're going to be reviewing, which is the way in which we're describing ADUs. So in reality, there aren't different types, but we are just defining them more clearly, which will make it more enforceable, more clear for permitting and approvals. So with that said, there were comments and questions from council that I will try to address within a brief presentation, but then maybe open it up if there are outstanding questions in that, if that sounds appropriate.
That sounds good. Thank you, Corey.
Okay.
And then when we were just talking about the questions, some of it was, I think was just for clarification. Some might be,
Right. I think a majority of those questions, I think we're clarifying. So we can breeze past those and stay with the substantial ones and maybe just explain as a summary overview what those major changes were. So that really is explained in that agenda summary, but to briefly overview again, is just working on the language of the ordinance so that it does completely and holistically legally comply with state statutes, that we're not over-regulating and opening ourselves up for challenges, potentially through land use code. A context of that is redefining what we had been working on in the terms of EADUs and IADUs, and then from there, even a subsection breakdown. What we had brainstormed as a result from that legal review was to come up with some more clear terminology, and what staff had come up with was this type 1, type 2, and type 3. It can't really get more clear than that as we're explaining those. And then within that, there are those EADU and IADU definitions that help supplement as to what we're talking about with those different types. In addition to that, we included the requirement for the deed note that states the type of ADU construction of the property in that deed, so that in the transition of sale, it is clear as the property owners are moving forward as to which type of ADU was constructed, therefore what their occupational and land use rights are for that type of ADU, because that is what is part of the change in the types. And then a recommendation was as well that when Nora had originally drafted that enforcement revocation section of the ordinance, it was broken down for a little bit more digestibility. And with that legal review, they said, nope, just keep it as clear and continuous with the state statute. So we've reverted it back to maybe a more robust section that just matches straight across rather than paraphrasing within our own municipal code. So that's the overview. I didn't mean to spend too much time there, but these are just definitions. If we do need to refer back, they're on the slide so we can easily access them for what an accessory dwelling unit is, what an EADU is, which is basically just that ADU that's detached from a structure. With an IADU is within a existing dwelling structure. And now into the different types. And this was a question I think that was asking for a clarification of the differences between type 1, type 2, and type 3. Type 1 is your most typical clear EADU, your mother-in-law above a garage or detached ADU, something that we've been permitting and are going to continue to permit in nearly the same way, but with some of the decreased regulatory barriers that we've talked about in previous versions of this ordinance. The language in there was something I worked on with our building official so that it is a reaction to HB 82, which by nature is somewhat difficult because it's calling on two codes to reference each other, which both codes will often change and you'll have to manipulate that. But state code is tying us together now. So we're trying to react to that the best we can. So there isn't going to be cross-regulation or discrepancy between definitions. So it does become a little bit out of the ordinary from our typical municipal code to reference their international residency code in our municipal code, but that's what this whole ordinance is all about. So EADUs, typical type 1. Type 2 are your typical internal dwelling units. ADUs that we've been currently permitting as internal accessory dwellings, constructed to that typical standard for two-family dwellings, moving forward as we have. Type 3, this is the new ADU, what we had previously been referencing as the HB 82 ADU or internal owner occupied type ADU. All of those titles had complexities and issues with potential legal challenge because of the phrasing of it. So type 3, which is our own, keeps it very clear, and it'll be built to the ADU standards of the International Residency Code in compliance with that HB 82. So those are the big changes. This matrix was included in previous reviews with council, but had brought up again to show the different type breakdown, and it had been requested that we go over this again. I'm just going to show it here. We can certainly come back to it if we do have further questions, but this is the same structure. I just changed the names. So that type 3, that's the HB 82 that had decreased building code requirements, but with the additional requirement that we can require owner occupation for that one type of unit. So you can see standard buildings of duplexes, detached ADUs, internal ADUs, and then that type 3. Earlier there in the overview with Mona and enforcement, there were some questions that seemed to pop up about active employment households, how the enforceability of ADUs is contextualized in that. So was hoping just to briefly touch on those as well. This is the section of our ordinance that calls out where we are requiring this. So this is a subsection within the regulatory code saying that type 1 and type 2 ADU rental and leasing occupancy shall be restricted to active employment households. A couple notes on this is that workforce housing is a synonymous term that we've been interchanging quite often. Active employment is our defined term here, and it's referring to those households that qualify through a certain standard similar to that was approved for the Grand County HDHO ordinance. So we're using that same framework and vetting structure to transition right into that same type of requirement. Whereas workforce housing does have some affordability connotations. We're just talking about occupation, no affordability component of that qualified type of renter. This is really small, but I just threw it in there last minute. That is the definition of active employment. If we do need a reference back verbatim, we can go back and do that. So getting on to how we're permitting these and then how we're enforcing them. Permitting and approval, like any other land use, would come through the planning and building office through a building permit action. We would supply that letter of compliance at the time of building permit approval to ensure that they comply with all of our land use code. Within that, the review and approval of active employment household qualifications would be reviewed just the way we review anything else. The applicant would have to provide evidence that they meet the qualifications that are outlined. There are various mechanisms, and we can be flexible with that, but the most typical that we would ask for to verify that is employment verification letter, which is a standard mechanism used in state and federal verifications. And then qualifications under state and federal fair housing acts. And that's really relating specifically to disabilities and work-related disability exemptions. So those are the main frameworks. There are elements like family that's included. The council has knowingly continued the use of family in that definition, knowing that we are not going to go down the road of trying to down to the T identify. So that's something that within our municipal code, we do have the authority for the planning and zoning administrator, who in some cases can be a person who is reviewing. So we have the authority for interpretation, where there are elements of the code that are intentionally meant for the intention of the code, that the zoning administrator can apply that for approval. That being said, type of ADU qualification is another component that was a question for enforceability of, if you get approved for a type 3, how is it that the property owner that's down the line, maybe even 2 transitions of sale, is going to be aware that they're a type 3 and not a type 2, and then the requirements that they're required to maintain through each of those, which would be through the owner occupation verification during the permitting process, that they would then have that deed restricted note that we will verify through a tax roll identification and mailing address. Basic, without going too much into a zealous identity review, this is the most common if you're applying for any types of insurance verifications of identity. for a property, that is at the very least what can be done, and it seems to be sufficient in some cases, which would be for this, I think. So that would be to get permitted. That's your first level of enforcement. Is somebody comes in, we get you categorized here. This is the ADU or your options of ADUs you can pick. Here's the one you're going to do, and you're going to build it to these standards. And then we get it approved, and then they build. So from there, we have two areas of enforcement. One would be the deed restriction requirements. One is for the short-term rental prohibition, which we currently have in our existing ADU code. We're just carrying that through. There were some additional questions about the timeframes of that, but I think we can maybe hold off on those. And then the second is that deed note stating the type of ADU that it's constructed. The reason we need to include that is for building permit purposes. If and type 3 ADU, which has decreased building permit requirements, say fire separation. So a person building an ADU does not put a firewall in, where a type 1, or excuse me, a type 2 would require it, a type 3 does not. It also requires an owner occupation for that property. So when that property sells, the appraiser, the new property owner, and in some cases the city, when those applicants approach the city, are all aware of what type of ADU it is and how to move forward in compliance, the same way we would with any other type of land use. Which brings us to that last area of enforcement. During the transition to sale, that is when we've caught currently a number of illegally converted duplexes, illegally built ADUs. It's a big catch-all between the sales of property. When you build it, that's when the city has visibility on what's happening. Then the property owner moves in for an extended period of time. We don't get to see what's going on in there because we're not, of course, invading those homes. But at the sale of the property, that is our next case of review, in which case we often do catch through appraisals and through everyone wanting to be aware of what it is that's going on in the home. Was it built with a permit? Is it conforming? Is it non-conforming? The only other time we get that is when folks are refinancing. There'll be an appraisal on the property at that point, at which point we're often engaged for questions of, was it permitted? How was it permitted? And are they legal or legal non-conforming? So that's all within the planning. Everything I've said, excuse me, from the approval and permitting up until this enforcement are all planning mechanisms. The last mechanism would be code compliance, where Mona comes in on the enforcement spectrum. And as far as what mechanisms Mona has are similar to that of nightly rentals, to illegal duplexes, everything else. When she's notified, she's able to take action on those. But that doesn't mean that we don't have enforcement or regulation on these going forward. Active employment household qualifications are identified in this ordinance and within the code, and would be the basis for Mona to take action on the way she does with illegal duplexes or illegal ADUs right now. So it's the same exact process carrying across. I do think the Good Landlord program would be a really robust addition to something like this, but is not essential for the approval of this ordinance and maintaining this type of land use by right to continue. I really apologize for that long-winded intro. That's the conclusion of my review. So I'm going to stop sharing screen, and then we can maybe open up for questions if that's the next the next area we want to go to.
Absolutely. Corey, you've done such a great job. You've worked really hard, and you've been really responsive to questions and concerns, and just how to navigate through this. So very grateful, and really grateful for your creativity in identifying type 1, 2, and 3. So it's very clear in category. I just think you've done a great job for this. I just want to ask the council, are we all clear in terms of what this is doing and where we're going? Are there fundamental, gosh, my brain is still really fuzzy around this ADU policy, or are we feeling pretty good?
if I can, I feel great, but I do have just a couple questions. And it's.
Well, I do want to get to questions, but I just want to
Okay.
make sure, like after that presentation, this is a big deal and you know, if any council member is still feeling like, gosh, I just need more time with this, or, you know, speak now. Otherwise, then we can really just like dive into any details of anything that's not sitting right with us with the policy.
Oh yeah, I want to thank you. I thought it was a great documented presentation, and all the little loose ends all seemed to magically disappeared, and all my little concerns have pretty much gone away. So thank you. It's a big help.
Okay, so we're feeling pretty good. All right.
Yeah, I think it was a really good presentation, Corey. The questions that you answered on the shared document were clear. I'm good with it. Things will come up. We create these policies and we create these amendments, and we're fallible human beings and we can make mistakes, and they're always fixable or always fixable.
Okay, so Karen and then Ronnie.
So Corey, I guess the newest one for me was the type 3. And again, just to sort of clarify, so that's following like state code, basically.
That's exactly right. So that type 3 is what we're kind of considering our hands-off option. That is the mandated land use that HB 82 has directed us to permit in the way that we're going about it. So in addition to that, we also permit these other types of ADUs, right, which we really like and work, but that's the one that we have to, and we have really limited regulation on.
And so it seems pretty lax and the only requirement is that it is a full-time, I mean, the owner it's owner occupied.
That's
correct?
Right. So that's the one catch that the state did include, is that those type 3s would have an owner occupied primary dwelling. So there was some questions about interchangeability of can the owner live in the ADU and vice versa. That is in other contexts acceptable. In the type 3, the owner has to live in the main, and then they can rent out or not rent out that type 3 ADU.
But even type 3 does not allow short-term rentals. Is that correct?
That's right. That's one of the additional requirements. Yep.
And then there was some text differences between, we discussed the 3-month process, and then some of most of what the attorneys, it looks like that they presented was 30 days. So is that still up for discussion? Are we trying to figure that out, or
we're good with this. That was a request kind of generating from the council's enthusiasm to eliminate some of the workarounds that people in the community have found for that nightly rental. It's basically a workaround for nightly rental, is to say, well, we're going to work off this 30-day mechanism. So that 3-month eliminates that. The reason that you're seeing 30 days and 90 is that 30-day requirement is in multiple areas of our code, basically defined as that is what a short-term rental is, and this is what a long-term rental is that 30-day point. The 90 days is purely specific to ADUs. So this is the only place where we're going to require 90 days for that first initial run section. And then it could go to monthly after that. But yeah, so that's why you're seeing differences there. But on our end, we're clear with what that requirement is.
Okay. And then I guess the last question I have is, so if at the point of sale, somebody decides they currently are a type 3 and they either don't want to rent at all, or they want to go to if I guess it would really only be the internal, but I mean, can they change at that time?
Absolutely. And that's what in recording things, we're going to make it a lot easier for folks to do what they want. And so we've already in the interim had people coming in and using these terminologies and processes, and they're like, this makes a lot of sense, thank you for doing this. And they are opting to go with the option that gives them more options down the line. So for them, they were wanting to put their mom in the ADU, But if they built it to the standard, they can sell their home for more money. And down the line, that person doesn't have to worry about lack of firewall or lack of disconnect. So they opted to go with it, even though they didn't have to, because it does provide more options. So if you're in your example, somebody buys a house, it's a type 3, so it doesn't have the separations required to rent both out. So if they wanted to buy it purely as an investment property, rent both sides, they could do that. They would just need to change it from a type 3 to a type 2, in which case they're adding those additional requirements, which is much easier when you're creating the ADU, but it is totally feasible. And we do it day to day with illegal duplexes and illegal ADUs that people are trying to come in compliance. So it's absolutely feasible.
Okay, thanks, Corey.
Ronnie, outstanding questions from you?
Yeah, can you just restate for me? I don't know why I'm struggling with this. What again is the difference between type 2 and type 3?
No problem. And so for type 1, those are the external. The way we thought about it is type 1 is just easy. Type 1, external, there's no conflict. Type 2 is what our standard ADUs are right now. They're an ADU that can be rented. It can be, the owner can be in that, or they can rent both properties, both dwellings. The type 3 is what we had been terming the HB82 ADU. So it's, and I can go back to that matrix if I know I'm more visual, but it's an ADU that has reduced building requirements, mostly in separation, whether it's separate air, separate disconnects for power, and firewall. In doing that, you're also adding the requirement for an owner occupation there. So because you're decreasing the safety, we want the owner, the landlord, to be there full time in case something does happen.
Okay.
And that was, yeah.
Restating that. And then, sorry, I'm also just having trouble having some of this stick. So the 90-day minimum rental is only on type 1 and 2 or also on type 3?
It would be, let me have my mind right on that. It would be type 1 and type 2, and our limited enforceability on type 3. But I will check on that to confirm. I've lost that in my brain with all the details off the top of my head. But the idea is,
go ahead.
No, just that would be what our long-term rental is, minimum for ADUs.
I ask because the way the ordinance is written, when you look at the sections, like for type 1 and type 2, you know, they both, maybe I'm getting myself confused here. Yeah, I don't know. There was something about the way I read it that, and it might have just, I might have interpreted something wrong, but that read to me like if you were doing a type 3, the maximum rental restriction we could put was over 30 days. So I wanted to check on that since that had been a concern from the beginning.
Okay. And so I went back to the clean version really quick, and it's a minimum 3-month rental initial for all 3 types of ADUs, which I thought was consistent, but yeah, it's all
Great.
3.
Thank you. Sorry, I was getting confused there. Okay. And then
we're fine with the state in doing so.
What was that, Mary? That broke up.
And we're fine with the state in doing so.
Correct. Because it's across the board requirement.
More outstanding questions, or are you still going, Ronnie, or are you done?
I did have one other question for colleagues, and that was, you know, we received an email about, you know, we have the 6 criteria that fit under active employment household. And I guess I wasn't really sure if we had come to consensus conclusion last time we had discussed, you know, and I think part of the idea for all of this was like, you're trying to create opportunities for people who are in the community to stay here. So for example, with retirees, you know, favoring retirees who had spent, you know, part of their last working years here. And so the question that was left in my mind from our last discussions, I wasn't sure if we had settled on, was this question of youth. Does it benefit us to throw something else, a seventh item on that list that does acknowledge youth who grew up here, that somehow, one of the struggles across the country and the world really is, youth who leave their community having trouble coming back. And if it would help some youth to come back or to stay here, then that is still kind of a question in my mind, because I hate to shut them out, but I also understand there are a lot of things on that list. So I kind of wanted to reopen that conversation. I didn't know, Corey, if you had ever come across other language, whether about, just like we have 5 years, you worked here 5 years before you retired. I don't know if it's like, maybe too arbitrary, but you were in the school system for 5 years. I have no idea.
Can I attempt to answer that concern? Because what I recall from our last meeting is that there is the opportunity for a remote worker to still okay, so let's say you work for Google, but you live in Moab. You have a home office, so you would get a home occupancy license.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it came to a point where residency was, active employment was getting pushed, and there are mechanisms for those that are employed by employers out of Moab to still be considered active employment if they went through the process of registering as a home occupation. Is that correct, Corey?
That's right. Those are two different things that we did talk about last time. One was the remote worker, but one was also what my youth local, somebody grad cadre graduate. What the result of the youth discussion was, so they went away and they're coming back. In the active employment household qualifications that we have, there are very few, I think, realistic situations where a young person coming back would not qualify under one of those, whether it be the family, which is broad, or any of the various types of employment. So creating an additional mechanism just for local, that would be implying that we're letting local youth come back, but then they would not be working in the community or working anywhere. So they would not be working at all, living in an ADU, which if they're not working, we get into the discussion, well, if they're not working, are they getting a paycheck? Are they paying rent? And if they're not, it's likely they're in a family situation, in which case they're covered there that way. So that was what I recalled of those two areas.
Okay. I guess I'll just say for my record, my concern in not doing something for youth and in allowing for, anyone who has external employment is, one of the reasons we're losing second homes to outsiders is they, by and large, earn more money than people here do. And so they can always outcompete. And that is my concern about, are we basically advertising, come live in Moab because you can just call wherever you work, your home office, and then you can qualify, and compete for housing with these other people here who are already here. That's my concern. That's what's difficult for me about that, but I don't know if anybody else has that problem.
Karen, you're muted. I think you're talking.
Yes, I was. Sorry. So Mary, your point about, let's say, working for Google and having a home office under the number 2 example, an owner or what am I trying to show?
It could be 3. Was that the one, Karen?
Yes. Oh, yes, that's correct. So a full-time aggregate of 30 hours of employment per week for 9 months out of the calendar year. Workers who are self-employed or works out of their home must provide their entire list of clients' workload so that it can be verified that a minimum of 75% of their work clients are based in Grant County. So that wouldn't apply for somebody who worked for Google. Do you know what I'm saying? So,
wait, yeah.
If I made that number 2, so what you did bring up, so number 3, I knew was where you were going with that. Number 2 is an owner or representative of an owner of a business. If you're a home occupation, you're own CEO. So you would qualify under number 2 for that.
Really? Even if you work for Google and you're getting a paycheck from Google, I'm just using that as
right.
kind of the worst case scenario, but, or I shouldn't say that. But yeah, so, I mean, I don't know, does that qualify? I mean, I really, you know, we received a letter, Corey, and it was interesting. It was like, and you know, here we are, and we're trying to tap service workers, right? And there's definitely, there's a need. You can't get everybody, but it is also, what are we concerned about? Like somebody who's not a contributing member of our community. I mean, so that, you know, that's what this person brought up, is that, you know, they volunteer for the community. They, you know, they license their car here. They, you know, are paying rent. There's like, they drink coffee at the local coffee shops and shop at Moonflower. Like what, you know, it's just a difficult situation.
Right. And what I think is challenging with ADUs, oh, sorry, go ahead, Cameron.
So when I'm thinking about this, I've started thinking about it not in terms of the individuals, but in terms of the local employers and the struggles they're having. And so when I think about it in terms of individuals, of course, I want to, like, everyone has the reason why they want to be here, and in an ideal world, we could accommodate them. But unfortunately, we have a labor crisis. And so what I come back to is, and it's not just service workers, it's the hospital with their perennial list of a dozen plus empty positions, and it's other essential services, and it's the school district. And so at a certain point, I feel like it is our responsibility, or my responsibility, to draw the line somewhere and start to carve out a little bit of housing that is targeted towards meeting the needs of local employers. And some of it is service workers in the tourism industry, and maybe we've got a tourism industry is not so popular in some quarters, but it's also other employers that we, or a significant portions of the community, really rely on for basic needs. And it's hard to target it precisely. I feel like we've cast a pretty broad net as it is. Another thing that I come back to is that this is just right now it is 0% of the existing units. Over time, it will grow to a small fraction. But if employers outside this area want to, in effect, use Moab as a bedroom community, then I say they should pay their employers a living wage for Moab, and they can just live in one of the many hundreds of market rate units that are available here. You're muted, Karen.
Sorry, Kaylin, I was just gonna say, but there isn't hundreds of market rate units available. I mean, there's
everything's available at a price.
Well,
I know there's a lack of inventory. That's part of the problem, is that we have a housing crisis. And so who are we creating housing for? And so, and wherever we draw the line, someone is going to be just on the other side of it. But so, it's imperfect, but I'm comfortable where it has been drawn in this ordinance. And if we need to revise it in the future, then the future councils can do so.
So we do have, you know, several items still to go on our agenda. I think it's important if council members want to say, I'm not ready to pass this, or I am ready to pass this, but I want to take this out of there. Speak now, or I would entertain a motion.
I will propose a motion if I can find the text. Let's see.
You are dramatically very quiet. It's very difficult to hear you.
Sorry about that. That better?
That's better.
Okay, sorry about that. No, I'm comfortable with the way it's worded now, and therefore I propose that we approve ordinance 2021-15 and ordinance approving a zoning map amendment. Wait, that's the wrong one. Never mind, cancel that. 2021-16, an ordinance amending the text of the Moab Municipal Code, revised section 1770 accessory dwelling units and section 706020 definitions.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion seems clear. Is there a second?
Oh, I second it.
I want to make sure he said I move to approve. I don't know if I heard that language. Sorry. Did you hear that?
Well, I think he also said 7 instead of 17, but what I hear is it is a motion to approve the proposed ordinance 2021-16. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Tawny. Discussion. Seeing no discussion at this point, I will call for the vote. Ronnie?
I think it's a really good ordinance, but I'm a little bit uncomfortable about some of the openings to outsiders, so I'm voting no.
Tawny?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Kaylin?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1. We're on to new business 8-1, the award of the new 2021 Vactron LP 873 STD. So we were contacted by Levi earlier today that he would like to pull this from our agenda because he got some information about the product that he wants to do a little more research on. So we're gonna revisit this at our next agenda meeting as well. Grateful for Levi for communicating with some of you with questions that you had about it. 8.2, Film Commission transfer to Grand County, termination of interlocal agreement and surplus of property. This is a briefing and possible action. Annie, I don't see. Summer, is Annie in the waiting room?
I don't have her in the waiting room.
Okay. It's possible that she's watching on the YouTube.
She just popped in. Hold on.
Okay. Or she was like, oh boy, I better put my popcorn down.
It's that YouTube delay.
Thanks. Hi, Annie. Oh, you're muted.
Got that. Hi, how are you?
No worries. Thanks for sticking with us. At this point, I think it's pretty clear. I would just like to open up any questions that council has for you. Otherwise, then I would also entertain a motion. So,
just want one clarification in the motion.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so the county has not passed their budget yet. They do that next week. And while I think everything is favorable, adding the language, depending final county approval.
Pending final county approval in their budget?
Yep.
Pending final county budget approval.
That's better.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, that's helpful. Council, questions or motion? Ronnie or Karen?
Let's see. I move to terminate the interlocal agreement for the provisions of the formation of a film commission by and between Grand County and the City of Moab, Resolution 20-2007. I also move to approve Resolution number 37-2021, a resolution of the governing body declaring city property as surplus. And I guess I should add to the end of that, pending county approval of their budget.
Perfect. Thank you, Ronnie. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Mike. Discussion.
I would just like to add that if ever in the future this sort of transition happens again, that we inform the employees that are involved immediately, so they don't just find out during budget hearing, if that's possible.
Thanks for mentioning that. I know that the employee in question that is moving from the city to the county has shared that concern. So thank you for raising that. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, I will call for the vote. Kaylin?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Bonnie?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Thanks, Annie. Thanks for being available. 8-3, and I don't know if Annie wants to stick around since we're talking budget and possible bridge, but 8-3, proposed resolution 35-2021, a resolution amending the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget. A briefing and possible action. I just want to start this off with gratitude to you, Ben, for being so quick to answer questions that the council has. So helpful. This is a budget amendment. We knew certain things that were coming. Other things were like, oh yeah, amend here and there. And so I don't know if you have any particular additional information you want to present, or we'll just open up to questions. Any outstanding questions from council?
Yeah, I'm happy to address. I didn't have any a presentation prepared, so I'm happy to address questions as council has them.
Okay, council questions, outstanding questions regarding this budget amendment that's before you. Or comments if you feel like you want to just make a comment on a line or two that you saw.
I think that Ben's narrative and his answers were extremely clear and concise, and it was very helpful. So I appreciate the work that you've done, Ben, and the work that everybody's done on this. These are always big projects to get in at the end of the year.
Ronnie, thanks.
Is this the place for us to have more discussion about the bridge? Since you were saying earlier, if Ben wanted to hear from us individually.
Yes, especially if it's a line item specific that you want to, yeah.
So I'll just say for my part that it's very clear to me how heavily people in the community depend on this bridge. So I think it's incumbent on us to make sure that they have access to that bridge. And so even though it hurts me a bit, and I kind of wish I had known about this need before we had the discussion about putting the money into the 400 East one, because I think given the choice between the two, I certainly would have put the money towards this one. Since we are where we are, I'd much rather just say, well, we're going to get fixing it in motion. I would kind of like to know, maybe the new council can be apprised of the timeline for that. Obviously, it'd be great to get grant funding, but I don't think it's fair to the people in our community who depend on the bridge to have them wait and not have use of that bridge. I mean, obviously, some people are going to use it at their own risk. It does make me wonder if there's anything we should be doing to make it a little bit safer in the interim, since there has been discussion that it'll take a while to replace it, whether we can make a makeshift higher handrail. Obviously, the fact that those boards are loose is definitely a flood hazard. I don't know if it's a hazard otherwise. And flood season, depending on if we see bigger storm events with climate change, we have to think about the timing of when that would be coming, and if we think we can do something before that time. So I guess I'd like to have a little bit of discussion about how much timing we're talking about, but then also what a realistic interim solution is for those residents, because you know, not everybody has the privilege of using a car or some other way to get to City Market or other things. And I do feel like it's our responsibility to find a way to make that bridge, okay, maybe it's not ideal and it doesn't meet standard, but that it is usable to them in the interim till we replace it. Those are my comments.
Other comments? You know, just with the bridge, there was a lot of frustration when the private property owner on King Creek closed, because that was like the dirt path through that private property, and it was another bridge that people were taking. I think that closure perhaps made this bridge even more heavily used, but I can't speak to that because I'm not a resident on Mountain View. And I honestly, I haven't biked that bridge in a while. I don't love taking that bridge as it is right now, safety or otherwise, because like I was saying before, the approach from either end needs some work as well. It sounds to me like the council is in favor of putting money to making sure that we've got this type of transportation in place, especially for this community, because they are separated from so much of our city by 191, and safe passage, to get on the other side of 191 is really important. And it's pretty far over the underpass, the one underpass that we have under Main Street. So, let's see, just for clarification, where is it, Ben, right now with how much money is being allocated in this amendment for the bridge?
$300,000. And we have not made that grant conditional. And so if this budget is approved as presented, staff would be moving forward with the plans to replace that with use of internal funds only. And by the time we got to the point of the outdoor recreation grant, we would have, before we started construction or incurred too many costs on that, we would have a better idea of whether or not whether or not the grant funding was likely.
Yeah, I think replacing a bridge is kind of a big deal because of the engineering and because of the site visit and approval process. Like if I were gonna personally build a bridge, I know that I'd be a couple months into the planning before I was even thinking about hiring the contractor and starting to buy the supplies. So when I was saying if the grant is in March, that it might dovetail. But I think what I'm hearing is that we have the reassurance that we can start moving forward now with the planning. And if we partner with the Utah Office of Outdoor Recreation, that partnership could still, that grant money could still come to fruition, and we would cost share the actual construction, but maybe not the pre-development expenses, because we're going to have pre-development expenses over the next few months. And I do know that projects that are shovel ready do get better points. So having a solid engineering plan in place would help us score better. I guess what I was just saying is I'm hopeful that if we are going through the process of replacing the bridge, that we kind of think of the full plan, and then we don't forget that other bridge that people used for quite a long time, and hopefully we can have regain connectivity over there as well. But so council, I guess with the bridge in particular, do we feel comfortable about the budget line item? Does anybody want to add money to it, or does that feel pretty safe? Okay, I think it seems pretty safe then. Any other budget questions or concerns for Ben? Because Ben, you really have done a great job. Thank you for being, so helpful. And it really does feel like this has been a very transparent budget amendment process. So thank you for that. If there are no other questions, I don't see anybody waving their hands for any other questions or comments. Nope. Okay, I will wait.
So Mayor, we skipped over a voting item on the Film Commission. There were two motions in there. One was for the termination of the ILA, and the second was for the surplus of the assets that we're going to transfer with the position.
Oh, and I thought you were just popping back in because of the bridge talk.
I missed you guys.
So much. Hey, it wouldn't be a meeting without a little bit of a mistake. That's all right. That's my opportunity to feel human in my last meeting. Okay, apologies for that. Back to our prior agenda item, and apology. Is there a motion to, so specifically, Annie, again, it's for the surplus?
The surplus of the assets.
Thank you. Is there a
Just so
motion?
I know, I think I put both of those in my one motion.
That's
Oh, you
what
did?
That's what I thought, but it didn't, I mean, I sometimes,
Maybe I'm not supposed to, so.
Oh, that works better.
But I think that's what I did. I mean, Summer, I don't know.
Summer, can you tell us?
I can't go back and listen to it, but I'm pretty sure that's what she said.
Okay.
I think she had both the termination and then the surplus in her motion.
Okay, my apologies.
That's what I
I
recall
can read it
hearing.
again if everybody wants. Yeah.
Well, I think we can just say that that was the intention, and if we get goofy, maybe next meeting we'll fix the goof, but, okay. All right, well, then back to the budget. Proposed resolution 35-2021. Was there a
Yeah. I move to approve resolution 35-2021, amending the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Tawny. Final discussion? I will call for the vote. Tawny?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
Kaylin?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Thanks, Ben, for your hard work. Okay, 8-4, the award of the Community Vision and Strategic Action Plan contract. I just want to thank Carly for paving this path. Thank you so much. You were charged by this council to move forward with a vision RFP and contract. You worked with 2 council members to make sure that as this came to us, that there was good workshop involved. The council members that were involved, correct me if I'm wrong, were Kaylin and Ronnie, and through the ranking, your favorites came out on top anyway. So I would entertain a motion.
I move to award the Community Vision and Strategic Action Plan contract to Future IQ at an amount not to exceed $80,000.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ronnie. Discussion on the process or the vendor?
Got a
Mike?
quick question. So I noticed, if I read this right, that the couple of the council members that participated in the selection process liked Future IQ, and a couple of staff members voted for another outfit. Is there an easy explanation why? I mean, I'm just kind of surprised that you guys didn't come to the same agreement. I'm just curious.
Well, it was a ranking process, and there was actually 4 that there were quite a bit more than 4 that made the first round of, and then there was 4 that emerged as the top ones. And so then we went back and we interviewed all 4 of those, re-ranked based on that. And it was close. And ranking is, I mean, we try to make a quantifiable process and objective as possible, and yet assigning a number from 1 to 10 on various categories, I think, is not science.
It would be social science.
It's social science, yes. It's a soft science.
Oh my.
Or it's a hard science with soft conclusions, but
Oh my goodness.
but hard spending outcomes.
All the statisticians out there are just reeling.
But the results are statistically significant. So sorry, I digress. I think some staff favored Vision IQ, some ranked another one slightly higher. But in the end, we went with the aggregate.
I voted for Future IQ. I was a voting member too, not a staff member, and I thought they were the most qualified.
Thank you, Chuck. Ronnie?
Okay.
Oh, this was the first process I partook in. so I would just recommend, to any council members who haven't, now or future, it was a really great process. I mean, it did involve, we did initially have, I think, 9 applicants, and it was like 40 to 100 pages of reading a piece. So it was rather intense. So we had a lot of reasons for the initial set of ranking that we did, but then we did interviews at those, the higher ranked ones, and that shifted some things for people. So I think that's part of it. I mean, I don't know if any other staff want to comment, but I felt like it was a really good process, and there is just a ton of good proposals. And I mean, even applicants where you thought, well, maybe not my first choice for this, but it's cool to learn about what they're doing because they could be great for something else.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Oh, Karen. I didn't hear.
Aye.
Kaylin.
Aye.
Tawny.
Aye.
Mike. Ronnie.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. I can tell it's getting late. I'm getting slappy. Agenda item 8.5, canvass of the City of Moab general election. The canvassing of votes from the City of Moab general election recount held on December 7, 2021. Is there a motion? Nothing changed.
I will move to approve the canvassing of the votes from the City of Moab general election recount held on December 7th, 2021.
Thank you, Tanya. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Karen. Discussion?
I have a question for Summer, if she's available.
I'm here.
Has Utah County provided the cast vote record?
Utah County will not be providing the cast vote record. The Lieutenant Governor's office has instructed them not to release that information. I want to pass this so that our new council can take office in early January, but this is concerning to me. In a traditional election, we can observe what's going on. I was present at the vote counting, and even though you can watch people like sitting at laptops, cannot observe the vote counting in the same way that you can with a traditional election. The cast vote record would allow at least a little bit more of that. So I find this somewhat disturbing that Utah County and the Lieutenant Governor are not providing this. So what I can report from Utah County, because Roseanne has been arguing that it should be released, my understanding, and this is just from what she has told me, because the city does not have access to this information, so we can't produce the information. But from what she told me, there was a directive that actually came down in 2020 that they had said something about not releasing the cast vote record for that election, and they are still holding to that directive for the 2021 election. I don't really have any of the reason why the Lieutenant Governor's office had made that decision, but that's the information that Roseanne is receiving from their office. She has been kind of arguing with them as to, not really arguing, but questioning why she can't produce that document. And they have just basically said they're not allowing her to release it.
Okay, well, thank you for pursuing that.
You're welcome.
Get up with the Lieutenant Governor. Huh.
And you're welcome to reach out to them. I have not contacted the Lieutenant Governor's office directly, mainly because it's not even a report the city could produce because we don't have access to the system. But, you know, I don't mind reaching out to him. I haven't heard it from the horse's mouth, but I can if you'd like me to.
I think it would be good to reach out. Ask the horse.
I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I share Kaylin's concern.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to call for the vote. Ronnie?
Aye.
Lonnie?
Aye.
Kaylin?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. 8-6, 2022 meeting schedule. Is there a motion from an outgoing council member? Symbolically, I think that would be fun. No? Is there a motion from Ronnie?
Oh, I'm willing to make a motion.
It's like, I don't have to go to those meetings. I'll make the motion. Is there an issue?
Before we made a motion, well, I mean, this may be for the new council to take up, but I was just wondering if there were any key dates that we thought might conflict with ULCT or other key meetings, but we may not have those dates yet. And in the past, we put in like joint planning commission meetings with the council, but again, that may be premature, but I was just going to make sure that wasn't something someone else had wanted to do.
Yeah, I think there's also just like what's going on with this pandemic. So I do recall over the last 4 years making amendments to this meeting schedule as needed. And I do think that meeting with the county jointly is a good idea. Maybe we don't have to wait for John Curtis to be here to do so.
So Mayor, I might suggest that you wait till the new council and new mayor are in, because they're the ones that got to show up for the meetings, not me.
Yeah, but I think what they need is us to pass the schedule so that they can plan, and you can always add to or amend in the future.
And I'm before the end of the year because it will be published.
I'm
and
required
they just
to
need
publish
our regular scheduled meetings.
So you council, you got to do this. So either it's somebody that's going to go to these meetings or not, that's going to give me a motion right now.
I will make a motion that we accept the meeting schedule for 2022.
Thank you, Tommy. Is there?
I will second.
Thank you, Mike. Any final discussion?
Can we add meetings?
We're gonna add a fifth meeting. We're gonna make every Wednesday of the month. Just kidding. Okay, let's see. Tawny.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Kaylin.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Ronnie.
Oh, sorry, I guess that's me. Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. And the 2022 holiday schedule. Again, we're passing for the next council, but all things can be updated as needed.
Can I make a comment here really quick?
Sure.
I'm not going to not vote for this, but I think next year maybe we should take a note from the county and consider adding Juneteenth to our list of holidays.
It should be on there.
It is.
It's on there on the observed date.
Okay, I don't have it in front of me, so I'm sorry.
Well, that's what.
I will also move to approve the holiday schedule for 2022.
Thank you, Tony. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kaylin. Okay. Mike.
Aye.
Kaylin.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Bonnie.
Aye.
Lonnie.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Approval of the bills against the city of Moab. Bonnie, is there a motion?
I move to approve the bills against the city of Moab in the amount of $1,086,658.77.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Kaylin, thank you. All, any discussion? Okay, Ronnie?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Bonnie?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Kaylin?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0, and we are at the end of the meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Yep, I'll second.
Wonderful. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Before all of you guys go away, I just want to say it's been an honor and a privilege also to serve with all you guys. Everybody is great. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Aw, it's sad.
We're all together in the chambers. But how about this virtual hug?
Mm.
I like that. Remember, I'm not a hugger.
We'll
All
see
right.
you guys. We will see you guys out there. I'm not going away. Okay. So
Yeah, see you maybe at the Christmas party. See you out there,
I hope so.
biking, walking, playing with electronics. As citizens to be heard.
Oh.
All right. I love
Good
you all.
night.